And tonight we have Mike Bailey. He's teaching. He is one of our top producers here at KW Legacy. So teaching Negotiate the Deal. So if y'all have any questions, he's a great resource. He's a fantastic teacher too. So super excited for y'all to have him here with you tonight. And just a quick reminder that this is the 4th week of Ignite. So we have tonight, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then we have one more class next Wednesday on Set Goals That Matter. That was the one that we didn't have in the 2nd week, so making that one up next week. So super excited to see you all here today, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mike.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Can everybody hear me?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, Mike.
Hello.
All right. We got a lovely crowd here. All right. So we're going to talk about Negotiate the Deal. That's always a fantastic subject because that's one of our duties and responsibilities as a real estate professional. I know that if any of you come from a background where you had some other sort of employment before real estate, or if you are still dual career and you enjoy that or are looking to transition out of that, you knew what your job description was. And I joke about that sometimes because when you took that job, you got a very detailed list of things that you are supposed to do. We all know what those are because when somebody asks us to do something that we don't get paid for, we know to say, I don't get paid to do that. I'm not doing that. But it comes a little bit. Say it again. Was somebody asking a question?
Nope, you're good. I think they just accidentally unmuted.
No, it's fine. Right. So in real estate, this is one of our job duties. So I'm gonna give you a freebie because I want you to be successful as a real estate professional. If no one ever gave you your job description, I'm going to give it to you right now. If you're ever confused about what you should be doing, because I know we get lost in the sauce as an entrepreneur, I'm going to give it to you right now. And as you reflect on this list, I want you to ask yourself, would you hire you? You know, because if you're not doing your job, then this is like a self-assessment to see like, hey, if Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday showed up and I didn't do these things, did I actually do my job? So number 1, script practice and role play. Did you script practice and role play this morning? Right? That's how we deal with objection handlers. That's how we deal with when people say no. I want you to have this. So your first is your script practice and role play. The second part of it is the lead generation. We know that we need to lead generate every day. That's the pipeline. That's how we keep the wheels turning. We're not finding leads, which are people with a heartbeat that have the ability to buy, sell, or invest in real estate. We do not have a business. The third thing is that we need to go on appointments. Obviously, if you practice what to say, you role play your presentation so you get it right every single time, you're getting those yeses. You're lead generating, you're calling those folks, you know, you're going to happy hours, you're doing open houses, you're knocking on doors, you're doing all those fantastic things that gets you data, their phone number, their first and last names, their email address, and their home address. Then obviously you need to go on appointments to meet with these people or to tour their property so that way you can sell it. So that's 3. Then 4, we're in it. We need to negotiate deals, right? We're putting in offers. We're doing all this lead generation. We knew what to say. We need to negotiate contracts. So that's why people hire us as real estate agents. And that's why this class is so important because it's actually one of your job duties as a real estate professional. And the last one is, look, I already forgot my job. The last one is a follow-up. The fortune is in the follow-up, right? So the fortune is in the follow-up because you'll meet those people, you'll write it down on a sticky note, you'll put it in your pocket, you text it to yourself, and then you'll forget what you did with it. I don't care if they're looking to sell $1 million house, a multi-million-dollar house, you will forget about those people because you'll have a great conversation with somebody. They will be ready to sell, and you'll make a note of it. And if you're like me and you have a child, they'll poop on themselves, completely distract you, and you'll be dealing with that immediate emergency, and you will forget all about this $1 million seller that told you to call them later tonight. So trust me from experience, make sure that you are putting those people in your database. So on with negotiating the deal. Why am I here to talk to you about that? I've been with Keller Williams since 2014. I started out as a dual career agent, solo. Some of you here have kind of seen my path here. Started out as a single agent, been on a team, went out on my own, started a team. I'm also one of the top producers here at the Market Center. So I lived through a lot of ups, downs, failures, and successes. And I want to pass on all of that I've learned to you all to make you better agents, because so much has been given to me. All right. Now, if you have any questions, let's make it fun. Feel free to ask. We want it to be fun. It's 6 o'clock. This is getting ready to, watch your favorite sitcom or eat the lunch before dinner, the late lunch. So let's not fall asleep here. So can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
All right, thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay, awesome. So what we're gonna focus on today. So look at this, look at our job description showing up again. Number one, we wanna lead generate for buyers and sellers. Number two, we're gonna make seller listing presentations and get listings. Now look, you're gonna run into a lot of fantastic agents that will tell you that they don't even use a listing presentation or a buyer presentation. And kudos to them, because they are super talented and they are running on entrepreneurial energy. And what I will tell you is that the presentation is not just for razzle dazzle. It is to set expectations. There are thousands of agents in this business and everyone does things differently. And that is your opportunity to express your value proposition. Why should I choose you rather than anybody else in this Rolodex? Because if I throw a stone, everybody's grandma, mama, cousin is a real estate agent. So if I have all these people to pick from, why should I choose you? And that's your opportunity to share that, show them how you do things as an individual or as a team, and really express your value proposition. Because you might be thinking right now, what is my value proposition? What separates me from other agents? What am I going to do differently? It may be because of your background, what you've done before real estate, what you're currently doing now. You may be a financial analyst, you may be a CPA, you may have been in the health field, you may be in the home inspecting field, whatever that is, you bring that uniqueness to your buyer and your client, and they will benefit from it. You may be a homemaker. Hey, if you have a couple children, woo, Lord, you are a master at management skills and getting things done. So all of that is important. They need to see that shine through your presentation. And when you have it down to a science, you're able to give the same message over and over and over and over again. And what that does, it makes it easier. And I'm kind of giving you some of the stuff that's not in this presentation. The reason why I'm spending a little time on that is because it makes it easier to negotiate on behalf of your client later. Because when stuff starts getting hard, they want to have confidence that you are competent and that they should trust you, right? Because you've built all that credibility from the beginning, so they don't need to question. Because when things start getting challenging, trust me, they start making phone calls to mama, daddy, brother, assistant, cousins, friends that have purchased property 20 years ago, making your job hard, especially if they don't really know what you're doing, if they don't feel comfortable with you. And I've seen it where people haven't done a presentation and they really haven't expressed their value proposition and they just signed up with them and they were ready to rock and roll. And then when the transaction started getting a little rocky, then they start doubling back and start asking questions like, well, how long have you been in the industry? And how long have you been doing this? And how many houses have you sold? And they start asking all these things because they're scared, right? But we don't go through that when we've expressed all of that in the beginning. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Make buyer presentations, get listings. Obviously, if you want to get business, you want people signed agreements. Now look, make buyer presentations and get listings. If you're working with somebody and you don't have an agreement with them, you are doing yourself and them a disservice, right? And most of the time people don't have an agreement is because they are afraid to present that paperwork because they don't know what to say. They're afraid that they're going to present that to them and they're going to say no. So they want to be the happy-go-lucky realtor and do all the work and not have that piece of paper that says, I'm working with you exclusively. And what happens is that those clients run into sharp agents while they're wandering around in open houses and they get snatched up. So don't do that to yourself. It's a professional manner. A lawyer would not, if they want to meet with you, guess what? They're going to charge you, right? And they're going to have something in writing to make sure that that is set expectations. Because again, your agreement is another form of setting expectations, right? And if you're going to contract classes, you'll see the importance of that because we don't want any misunderstandings. There have been agents who have done all the work and then not gotten paid because they did not have that agreement and they presented it, and it's very tragic. So don't be that agent. Now, you see that there's two sides of this. We're talking about growing the business and running the business. So all of what I mentioned on the left is growing your business. We're also going to talk about running the business. Those are two things. So we need to make sure that we're balancing out our activities. Running the business is market seller listings, showing buyers houses, negotiate contracts. That's our job, right? Transaction management to closing, vendor management, setting goals, compliance, risk management, attending training, and getting coaching. Every good coach has a coach. Every great agent has a coach of some sort, of some sort, because you will hit a ceiling and you need somebody to bounce those ideas off of so that way you can break through those ceilings. So breaking down the common points of negotiation. Y'all ready? Okay. So buyer's agent. So we have buyer, buyer's agent, we have seller, and we have seller's agent, right? Now consider, how can your ability to negotiate affect the outcome of the deal? I just want to, somebody answer that question. How do you think your ability to negotiate can affect the outcome of a deal?
Well, in my opinion, I feel like when you're knowledgeable, when you're prepared, when you have the right answers to the questions, I feel like the outcome is better in your favor. Versus if you don't, then I don't think it will go so well.
I love that. Amber?
Yes, Mike.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Amber. Who else? I mean, that is a great answer. So we only got one real estate agent here.
I would say confidence.
Woo!
The confidence to, like Amber said, have the skills to negotiate, but you got to have the confidence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So some great answers, right? How can your ability to negotiate affect the outcome of the deal? It can have a significant effect on the deal, because think about it. imagine being a first-time home buyer, right? You've saved this, this money, this $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 that you socked away. You've either saved it up yourself or you've gotten a gift of funds, and they are nervous, right? And let's just say they're just green. They live in an apartment. They have no idea about the inner workings of a home, and all of a sudden, the home inspector comes and says, "Ooh, boy, there's no grout on this tub. If you don't grout the tub, there could be mold behind the tub, and water can leak on the floor and crash to the ceiling, right? And then, right? How many of us have had a home inspection scare the bejesus out of a client, and they've turned a very fixable situation into a mountain, right? So the language we use, and this isn't in here, right? The language we use when we're confident, and we're able to kind of slow things down and kind of be the rock for our client, even if it is major. It's like, we got to take a second. We can't be the ones jumping off the ceiling, right? We have to bring it all together, and we have to be able to negotiate. And there's a difference between negotiating and arguing, right? There's a big difference. Don't get it twisted, because I've seen two agents kill a deal because their egos have gotten in the way, and they have forgotten that this is about getting the buyer what they want and the seller what they want, right? Always remember that this is not about you. You are merely a vessel. You are facilitating the transaction. I can't express that more than once, because sometimes there are going to be things that upset you. There are going to be agents and clients that test your patience, and you have to remember that you have to make the better decision for the benefit of your client. You have to make sure that you are not getting in the way, and you will help them have a successful transaction. If it weren't for so many emotions in the transaction, they wouldn't need us. We are the glue that keeps the deal together. Because when the buyer has had enough, the seller has had enough, we are the ones that negotiate the terms and make it make sense and create a happy ending for these clients. So your ability to negotiate, what are some ways that you negotiate in your everyday life? Some of y'all are professional hagglers. Don't hold back now.
Who's gonna cut the grass?
Say it again.
Who's gonna do something around the house? What do I do to do that? Or like, what will you do if I do this kind of thing?
Exactly. What else?
Negotiate dinner with my child. French fries versus broccoli.
Yeah.
Negotiate. Broccoli today, French fries tomorrow.
Absolutely. So there's some give and take there, right? There are ways. It's like, okay, if your child doesn't eat the broccoli tonight, is it going to kill him, right? Probably not. Probably not. I mean, if anybody has actually lived through trying to do that strong man stance, like, oh, you're going to sit here until you eat it, tell me how that works out for you, because that didn't work for me.
I can say that for me, I even negotiate with myself.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that, if it's something, I want to do that's fun, and yet I know it's something else that I don't want to do, I'll say, okay, let's do this thing that you don't want to do in order to do this thing I want to do. So I even negotiate with myself.
Exactly. Sometimes we negotiate against ourselves, and that's funny. But that's time for that's another story. So we want to make sure that we are slowing things down, preparing and getting information. that example that I talked about with the home inspection and the tub, yeah, I exaggerated a little bit, but there are small things like that just because we don't know. Don't be afraid to admit what you don't know and find support. Find that professional. If you're not a master plumber, then you need to, hey, you know what? This looks like it's a big deal and I'm not completely sure. So let's do this. Since we have a deadline, before the deadline, let me gather some information from a professional that I trust and reach out to them and maybe share this home inspection with them and have them give me an idea of like what it entails to make a correction like this based on what we're seeing here. And let them tell us whether this is, you know, a couple $100 or this is like thousands and thousands of dollars worth of an issue, right? And when you're able to give somebody information, you know, that helps your ability to negotiate because you have all the details. You're able to negotiate better terms for the client to make it successful, to make this a successful transaction. So I would say one skill that makes a great negotiator is being resourceful. Like being resourceful and being able to, and being relationships, because you have to build relationships in this business because there are going to be times where you don't have a lot of time to be able to make a decision, right? So it may be instant. We got a market like this. You start trying to figure out like, okay, you see something, it may be an issue. The seller, you know, the buyer wants to make an offer on this house, but they have a concern. It's, you know, it's 2 days on market. You gotta make a move, and this is the thing that's causing their unreadiness. Like you got to be able to reach out to somebody real quick and be able to clear up whatever that objection is immediately, so that way you can go back to negotiating terms. Does that make sense? What other skills do you think that a great negotiator may possess?
Skill of listening and understanding what the other person's saying.
Listening. Oh my goodness, Kurt. These 2 ears are here for a reason. Some of us hear. I'm almost positive that 100% of us here can hear, but we don't always listen, right? We have to find out what is important to the buyer, right? Because they may say, you know what, I'm cool with this. I'm ready to move forward. And then we start creating problems as to why they shouldn't do this or do that, right? And now we're back to getting in the way because we're expressing our opinion and how we feel about things. It's not our decision. We're giving them the information that they need to make a decision, and we need to listen, right? We need to, because we may be fighting against ourselves. And that is important, to hear and listen to the client of what's important to them. The client said, I do not want to have any house that has a bedroom on the 2nd floor because of my knees. I'm going to be having surgery soon. That's important, right? So if you keep showing them houses where they done already told you that I can't do 2nd floor, where is that going to lead you, right? So listening is important. So it's not only allows you to be able to negotiate, but also it allows you to meet their need. Why they have here the question, why is asking questions important when negotiating?
I think you need to be able to see where the other person is coming from and kind of let them help you find a starting point, because every negotiation kind of needs a starting point. So you need to kind of work together to find that. And when you ask questions, it sort of helps you figure out what the barometer is for that kind of, you know, where is the jumping off in this negotiation?
Exactly. I love that. Hold on. Who's that talking to me?
That was me, Ashley.
Ashley.
Anderson.
All right. New rule, everyone announce their name before they start talking. All right, lovely answer, Ashley.
This is Amber.
Hey, Amber.
Hey, I was gonna say, once you find out, when you ask questions, you can always use that information in negotiating with them. Like if you find out the reason why they want to buy a house, and if they kind of like stray away from that, you can, kind of like remind them, this is what's important to you. And this is why you want to do this. So that's a good way of why to ask questions as well.
Absolutely. And it goes when you're negotiating the deal, right? Because there may be something specific that they need. And that's when what Kurt said, that listening comes into play, right? Because the average transaction may be from 30 to 45 days, more, depending on their financing or any assistance that they may be using. So let's just say 40 days. Now, let's just say the buyer tells you that they need 60 days because of because somebody's their child is graduating. There's some things that they gotta figure out family-wise. They're waiting on a response from their employer. They have to move. They have all of these. They have these moving parts that have an effect on their life, and they need these terms to be in place so that way they can move forward with the purchase or the purchase of that home. So that's in the case of a buyer. So on the seller may say, okay, a term might be, hey, I want to sell my home, but I need you to be listening and I want it to be clear that I need a rent back, where I need to sell this home and I need you to make sure that you disclose it in the listing that I need a 30-day rent back, because I need that money to get out of here first and foremost. And I want to have that money in hand so that I can make a strong offer on my next purchase and buy it all cash. So you need to be listening, because not only does that affect my ability to transact as the seller, it affects my ability to transaction out of this home. It affects the buyer, right? Because let's just say we don't find that out because we weren't listening and we didn't disclose all of that, even though they told us that. And then we accepted a buyer that needs to move right away. Now, how upsetting is that, right? The seller told you that they needed terms that allowed them to stay for 30 days. The buyer doesn't have anywhere to go. So now what are we going to do about that? So now we've just created a whole situation for both the buyer and the seller that could jeopardize the entire transaction, right? So we want to make sure that I'm just going to give you a tip that you should have a good intake system, right? So when you're doing your consultation, you should have a place of where you're putting those notes. If you're using a CRM, which you should be, and updating that contact information, those little things that they're giving you piece by piece, you want to make sure that you're putting that information somewhere. Like, yes, me and my husband are purchasing this home, but we need to make sure that we have this extra room because our in-laws are going to be staying with us. Charles, when we sell this home, I need you to make sure that we are accepting an offer that meets this specific net. Because Charles, if we don't get this specific net, then the deal is off, right? So I've expressed that to you. I also need you to be on your P's and Q's, because I'm out of state. So there's an out-of-state tax that also is gonna come out of my proceeds that you need to remember, because the title company is never gonna remember, right? You're gonna say it, they're gonna forget it, and then it's not gonna be a part of it. So you need to make sure that whenever we're reviewing offers and we're accepting it, I want you to make sure that you've taken all that into consideration. Because if we get a week away from settlement and I said I wanted 99,000 and I find out that I'm only going to make 88,000, then we just wasted all of our time. Right? So things like that are important when we're talking to the client and making sure that we're able to negotiate the terms that they want. And sometimes you can have in your conversation, it's just like, okay, especially when you're dealing with a seller, which makes kind of, things easier. You should be doing a net sheet. Like after you have their agreement signed, if you've gone all over everything, like, of what, because people get excited about what they can sell it for, but they haven't really figured out what their bottom line is. So you should be putting together a net sheet for your sellers, because that also, so from a seller standpoint, that net sheet has a lot to do with you negotiating terms for them, because they may get to a point where it's like, I would not have agreed to do those repairs or that repair specifically if I had known my net was going to be X. You understand what I'm saying? Because they're asking me for I'm only getting $30,000. I need to buy another home. They asked for $5,000 repairs. I agreed to it, and now I find out I'm only making $25,000, and now I'm disappointed because we weren't having that conversation. Does that make sense? So certainly, I would certainly encourage you to make sure that when you're working with your sellers, that you're making the net sheet a part of the conversation, in your negotiation, right? And you're looking at that against, hey, because when you're talking to your sellers, it's like, okay, great. If we accept this deal, this is what you will realize. This is what your proceeds would be, right?
Is there an automated net sheet with your presentations? It seems like that's early in the process. There's so many things that can change. I mean, I'm just
and Cynthia, thank you for bringing it up. That is important, right? Because it does change, and that's why you will do it. You may end up doing it multiple times.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because you may, in the beginning, right, when you're looking to win that listing, you're bringing your comps and you're showing them that, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, your home, based on the comparable sales that I pulled in your neighborhood, I'm confident in my ability to sell your home at $500,000, right? And based on your mortgage payoff and transfer and recording fees, and potential closing costs, we estimate your net proceeds to be XYZ, right? And then as you get offers in, you will do it again. Because then if you accept an offer and they say, okay, great. If you accept this offer, then you give them another estimate, not just saying like, hey, this one looks good. You say, based on this, and because there are terms in the contract that the buyer is sending over to you that may be deductions on the net sheet, because they may ask for a home warranty. Well, that's $500, right? They may ask for additional transfer taxes. That comes off the seller's net proceeds. They may ask for seller contributions. Well, we didn't factor in that, so that comes out of the seller proceeds. So now that needs to be disclosed again. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we have the offers. I've shared it with you for review. I'm letting you know that if you accept this offer, this is what your net looks like. We don't allow our sellers to accept offers without seeing the breakdown. Period. Because I didn't know. No. Yeah, I thought, no, you didn't. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. We don't have time for that. Because at the end of the day, we want to get you paid and we want to be paid. So brainstorm negotiation issues. All right. In your experience, what do you think could be a negotiation issue?
Financing.
Yes. Didn't we see that in this market?
Home inspection.
Home inspection. Woo!
Your professional fee.
Your professional fee. Yes, yes. So script practice and role play, we all have a price, right? We need to be able to stand behind that and objection handle, right? Not everybody is your client. Understand that, right? And that's okay. So we got financing, we have home inspection, we have your professional fee. What else?
How about the appraisal?
The appraisal, the mysterious people that show up and change things. Right? It's the appraiser, right? Let's kind of go through a few of those. Let's start with financing, right? So when we're talking about negotiating the deal, as an agent, look, I feel like I don't like people doing my job. If you're like me, I don't want people doing my job. So I like to stay in my lane. But I like to have enough information about everybody that's working with me, just enough to be dangerous. Just enough so that when my client asks a question, we know who to direct them to, right? But I also want to empower you as the real estate professional to not be afraid to have the financial conversation with your client. Straight up. Do not leave that to the lender. Do not leave that entire responsibility to the lender. Trust me, you will be let down, and it'll be at the worst time, right? Because not everyone has the same process of screening a client as everyone else, right? So, you know, not all not all real estate agents are created equal. Not all lenders are either, right? So there's nothing wrong with making sure that you understand their needs. There we go back to listening and finding out how much money they have to go on this journey. And that's exactly how I say it. So you can steal that from me. It's like, great. You've had a conversation. I don't care what the lender said. They already said it. They already had the conversation. That's fine. I want to know for myself, because guess who, if you're like me, guess who's getting in their car, driving around, spending their gas, right? So I want to know, hear it myself, how much money are we working with, right? Before I get in the car, start riding around all over God's green earth, I need to know that we're ready for this ride, right? Because that's also going to help you, because sometimes you got to boom, 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 right? You trying to put together a contract. It's Sunday evening. You found the one. You may not have time to run it past the lender again to see if this is going to work out, right? So you need to know some of this information for yourself, right? What kind of, if you haven't practiced, practice filling out the finance addendum, whether it's a FHA finance addendum, because that sometimes that stops people, because they're like, I don't know how to fill this out, right? And next thing you know, they don't even get the offer in because they didn't know how to fill out the FHA financing addendum. They didn't know how to fill out the VA financing addendum. They didn't know how to fill out the conventional financing addendum. There's formulas to fill it out. So do yourself a favor and figure that out, right? Look that up, because that'll stop people, make people pause. Know how much money they're working with. Why? Because in the heat of the moment, when we start guaranteeing appraisal gaps, offering over list price, offering to pay for the seller's transfer and recording tax, you need to be doing your net sheet, because you can do it for buyers and you can also do it for sellers. And you need to practice on that tool. It's available to you in Bright. It's under the tab that says financial, and then you can hit net sheet, and it allows you to do buyer or seller. And some of the information is auto-populated, but get on YouTube and start figuring things out. You guys are smart. You figure it out, right? How to make it work for you. Because when you're negotiating the terms, you need to actually have an understanding of how much this is going to cost your buyer, right? And same thing with your seller. When we start negotiating terms, right? What does this mean for your client? Because if we start guaranteeing things and promising things, and then sometimes, because there's something called an LE, right? That loan estimate that doesn't get kicked out, and let's say it comes out later and they find out like, okay, the buyer's estimated cash to close is $20,000, and they calling you up talking about, Mike, Sean, $20,000? I didn't know that's how much money I was going to need. I only have 13. Well, now what? We already in it, right?
Yeah.
Deal just blew up. Boom, gone. We couldn't do math. That's what happened. Right? And listen, trust me, I've seen it happen. Scary. It's scary, right? Because sometimes a buyer will choose a lender because of, for whatever reason, a commercial, a TV, a recommendation that you haven't worked with, they haven't worked with. Maybe they're new, maybe they don't necessarily, they're trying to figure it out for themselves, and they're just pre-approving people. That letter ain't worth what is written on. Anybody ever experienced that? Debbie, you experienced it.
Yeah, I trusted Op City. They told me that a person was pre-qualified, and I was working with them, and I took that at face value, and it turned out that they weren't pre-qualified at all. So.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not asking you to be a lender, right? I'm not telling you have them submit their tax returns to you and start collecting all of that. I'm not asking you to do that, but at least be willing to have the financial conversation, not only with the lender. If you are working with the buyer and you haven't had that one-on-one conversation with the lender, you're doing yourself and the client a disservice. There needs to be a conversation. Don't just accept that piece of paper and start running out here and doing stuff. Have that conversation. The more engagement that you have with your partners, right, the better off you will be and able to negotiate terms for the client. Because I've had a lender say like, look, Mike, the buyer has a rack of money. They are okay. They don't want to do it. They don't want to use more than X amount of dollars, but if they have to, they can. Or, hey, Mike, I just want you to know that I'm having this conversation with you now that they only have X amount of dollars and I'm willing to do a lender credit. So if you need that for confidence to be able to submit an offer in this range, be okay with doing that. Okay, my man, high five. I know I now have the power to move forward, right? Does
Are
that
we
make
able to
sense?
find out the amount of the credit that they're offering when we have that conversation?
Yeah, I asked, right? It shouldn't be a secret.
Okay.
It should not be a secret. Y'all are all working together for the benefit of the client. The more information that you have to be able to move forward, because at the end of the day, we want to win, right? We want to win the bid. We want to get the client what they're looking for. And we want to protect them so that way they don't go outside of what they need, right? They have a certain amount of money. They have to pay for home inspection, appraisal. They got to do, they have, maybe some incidentals that they need to take care of that they've already factored into that budget. We need to be having those open conversations for the benefit of the client. Because we can get into the heat of the moment where we submit an offer, they counter. The buyer might say, yeah, sure, go for it. But it's like, whoa, time out. Wait a second. Last time we talked, you had this amount of money. Where's the other money coming from? Because this is where we're at. They may say, don't worry about that. Grandpa just said he's gonna give me a gift of funds. Okay, we cool, we good. He's gonna give you $10,000. That's what you just telling me right now? Okay, we're fine. We can go ahead. Right? So don't be afraid to have that financial conversation. Debbie.
Is it your recommendation that you don't even, like, what if they push back and they don't want to go through the pre-qualification process before they look at property?
They're not your client.
They're not your client. Okay.
Period. And listen, to me, in my opinion, right? And this is not to talk bad about anyone, right? But we're not just, when we talk about professionalism, right? And we talk about having a standard. How can we do that if we don't set the tone from the beginning, right? If this is not about being mean or being nice or blah, 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 right? It's about being professional, right? If you call your doctor up right now and say, hey, can I slide in there real quick? They're gonna be like, no, right? There's a way we do things. You need to call this phone number. You need to talk to the young lady or the young man at the front desk. They're gonna let you know the availability we have next week on the 20th at this time and this time, right? This is how we do things. If you go to the dentist, they're gonna want, if you're new to that dentist, they're gonna have a whole like presentation. They wanna, get your charts and all that other stuff before they start working on your teeth, right? So same thing with pre-qualifications. There should be a consultation. They should be signing an agreement before you start going on showing appointments, because you're leaving yourself out there to chance. It just really doesn't make sense. And that's a sign that we have to work on script practice and role play, because they're really, what they're doing is testing you out. Like, when you go in the store and the thing, in the little toy, it says, try me, you keep pressing the button, and you keep using it up and you don't buy it, right? That's what happens. That's what happens to you. You the try me doll in the store, right? So they want to fill you out, and you don't get a chance to, you also don't get the chance to share your value proposition. Because typically what will happen is they say something like, oh, I'm here at the house right now. You figure like, oh, I'm gonna just show them one house and things are gonna work out, and then I'll get them to sign the agreement. Yep, that doesn't happen, because most of the time the house that they're looking at, they don't even buy, right? They walk in there, they walk out, and they say, oh, I didn't really like it. What you gonna talk to them on the hood of your car? Right there in front of the house. You're gonna do your presentation right there. How are you gonna have that conversation? And they say, okay, and then you start talking about the agreement there. Oh, I'll think about it. And call you back, and then you're chasing them down. Right. So the best thing to do is have a consultation. Best thing to do is have a consultation. They don't have a pre-approval. That's like window shopping. You don't know if they're qualified. And you're riding around showing them houses. And the other reason why it's a disservice to them is because you don't know what their price point is, right? How can you because what we know is that price point takes you into specific neighborhoods, period, right? So if you are looking at $500,000 houses and we don't have a pre-approval that says we are looking at $500,000 houses, and we find out that you're only approved for $400,000 houses based on today's interest rate, based on your income today, then we just wasted a lot of time looking at $500,000 that you're not in a position to buy. So it also tells us where we're looking. Make sense? Next thing we talked about was the negotiation issue, was home inspection, right? Home inspection, being able to go through that. I would suggest that you attend the home inspection, at least until you are like to a place where this stuff becomes second nature, right? Because you've seen so much, and you can kind of have an idea, because sometimes the pictures just don't tell the whole story, and you have to make decisions on those things. So negotiation based on home inspections, because there's give and take. that's a time when you want to be have that conversation of what's important to them, right? Because the idea, sometimes the seller, well, oftentimes the seller is not going to do 100% of what the home inspector is recommending. So I'm just going to share this with you. The home inspector is paid to find issues with the property, right? That's their job. They are going to do their job, and they are going to find something wrong. If we did a home inspection on your house right now, we would see a laundry list of things that are an issue that you'd probably be looking at like, this is poppycock, because I live here and that's not a problem, right? They're not contractors. So you have to be able to look at some of these things unbiasedly and be able to bring your client to a place of like, okay, let's just look at this. Let's look at the important things of what you need to be done. Okay, the knob is loose on the bedroom door. You know, there's a little bit of, you know, let's say the linoleum in the bathroom is peeling a little bit, but the HVAC is acting up. And by that, I mean heating and cooling system. So what's more important to you? Because we have 100 things in this home inspection, and with the terms that we've already negotiated and the way the market is right now, we cannot expect for them to repair or replace all of these things. So what's more important, the linoleum that's peeling on the bathroom floor that you can get at Home Depot, or is it more important for us to focus on the heating and cooling system, so that way you're not in this home sweltering, right? The appraisal is important. It's not mandatory, but I want to be there at the appraisal to represent my seller, right? If at all possible. I've rarely been told by the appraisal that that they don't want me there, because they're not supposed to be influenced by the agent. But I have seen time and time again where they are overworked and overwhelmed, and they do not know all of the details of the property. And sometimes they just don't have the time to give you that feedback, so they're guesstimating, right? And a lot of times when they're there, it's more of like, is this a brand new renovation? How old is the roof? Does that fireplace actually work? You know, something that they think may not be functioning is actually functioning. They may have a question or two that they need to ask you. And I want to be there with my own comps and with an in-depth knowledge of this property, so that if they have questions, I can answer them, because I want them to know any and everything that they need to know about this property, so that way those numbers can come back the way that they need to for my client. Does that make sense?
Can I ask a question real fast?
Yes.
And you'd be going off the property records, right? You wouldn't just be taking your the seller's word for anything, right? If they told you something, you'd be able to verify it.
So give me an instance where there wouldn't be something that I could see.
I don't think there would be.
Mhm.
That's what I'm saying, right? You'd be
I can give
before
you one.
the.
Okay, I'm sorry. Kurt, go ahead, Sharon.
I'm sorry. Let's say, for instance, water coming into the basement. There may
Mhm.
not always be an indication of water, of potential water damage in the basement until, let's say there's a heavy downfall during the time of the home inspection or something. So you may not necessarily know that water is coming into the basement until it actually happens. And in some cases, that does not happen until after the buyer has already purchased the property.
Okay, so Kurt, Sharon, great questions. So I'm going to answer that. And sometimes I go off on a tangent, so make sure you bring me back, like with the fishing line, just in case I go off and go too far off, right? So no, I do not want to no, I do not want to be making things up about the property, right? I do not just want to go by the seller's word. Anything that they tell me about the property, to an extent, well, not to an extent, but I want to have verified, right? Because I want to be able to do my due diligence to represent them to the best of my ability. If they say this, if they've done work to the property and it was permitted, I can look in the system and see whether permits were pulled for certain things, right? Because I've already advised them that if you're going to do work, it needs to be permitted because we don't want any issues or you get sued later, right? Now, for something like water or something going on where the seller may be being deceptive because they're just trying to offload something onto somebody, right? That's considered a latent defect. Now, that's why it's asked in the disclosure disclaimer document, are there any latent defects? That's why you want to make sure that you don't touch that document, that they fill that out, right? Because they are asked questions in that document. So it's 4 pages. They either fill out the either or, right? It's not both because it's called the disclosure / disclaimer. So they are either disclosing, which is pages 1 through 3, or they are disclaiming, which is page 4. And on page 4, if they choose to disclaim, it asks, are there any latent defects that you are aware of? So if that basement floods and there's water coming in there and they paint it over it, trying to cover it up, and unbeknownst to me that this thing floods, they can get sued, right? Now, if I am aware of it, now that's unethical, right? Because you are aware of it up front. And what you should do is advise them to remedy it the right way, right? Because if it's remedied, then we don't have to talk about it, right? We don't have to talk about it. If you had licensed professionals come in there and take care of it and remedy the issue and there is no longer an issue, it's a mute issue, right? Now we don't have to worry about that. But if it happens in the middle of a transaction or something like that, that needs to be disclosed. Or if we find out in a home inspection and then we go back on the market and we don't remedy it, like that stuff has to be disclosed. Make sense?
If they remedy it, that they have to put that on that document too, that they remedy it and with him or how.
Mm-hmm. So if you want guidance on how to fill that out, the best person to help you with that is the broker, right? If you have questions on like latent defects, major concerns with the property, then on whether you need to disclose that information or not, that that needs to be done. But like if you're renovating, like if somebody, but in common practice, like if somebody's renovating a property, like they bought a dump, they're not gonna say the roof was leaking, the flood was flooded, and this, that, and the other, and we fixed it. No, they're not doing that. They remedied it with licensed contractors, whatever the issues were. They did it with permitted work, which would be in the system because it's a full renovation, and they put it on the market. Okay, Kima, you're shaking your head.
No, I was just trying to clarify that you would just document if they told you that that's what they did.
Right.
Just
right.
Document it just for proof is what I was saying.
Right. Yeah. There's a way to do that because in the disclosure of the documents that it's in there. It asks you a bunch of questions and you can say what that is.
But the seller has to do that, correct? Not
Right.
you.
Right. That's the seller is doing that. Yeah. Now, like an example, I'm gonna just do a clean example of like where this goes wrong, right? You are selling a property for the seller. All your documents have been completed. The seller knows that there's a leak in the roof and they did not disclose that information. that is a latent defect, right? That is something that they should have made you and the buyer aware. If they chose to put it on the market that way, then you need to make people aware of it. And because once people know about it, and if they're aware of it, they can deal with it however they need to, right? There might be somebody still willing to buy it, but you cannot withhold that information. Make sense? So reason why all that's important is because the condition of the property becomes things that people negotiate as terms, especially when it comes to the home inspection report. Make sense?
I have a question. Because I know the disclosure is basically related to like material defects to the property, right?
Mhm.
What about, I'm going to give you an example because this actually happened to me in a transaction. My buyer was looking at investment properties and it was an apartment building. And it was 2 apartments and one was vacant and then the other apartment had a tenant. As I was negotiating the contract, I talked to my buyer and they said they were willing to because they wanted to use this as rental income, so that they said the tenant could stay. So I contacted the seller and said that we were going to write the contract and that we were going to allow the tenant to stay, but I needed a copy of the lease that was in place now, because I needed to fully understand that lease and that relationship. And I had some trouble getting that. And when we were visiting the property and with my buyer, I got a really bad vibe from the tenant that was upstairs. So I did a little digging and it turns out that that tenant hadn't paid rent for a couple of years. And it was one of the main reasons the sellers were trying to get out of it. And it was a very difficult situation, right? So, but do you feel the seller is obligated to disclose those types of things, or we just have to be really good at trying to do the work to figure that out?
Because that is a term, because think about it. If they're looking at an apartment, the income of that property and the tenants are a part of the deal, right? So
Right.
if somebody's not paying and you're not disclosing that information, you know, that's we back to unethical, right? You know, that's just not good business, right? And because of that, you know, that's grounds to terminate the agreement.
Right.
Because if it's being disclosed that rent is being collected X amount of dollars a month, and that this is the annual rent roll, and then this person is not paying, what you're asking the buyer to do is purchase this property and then have to go through an eviction process.
It's going to be expensive and a pain.
Turnover of the unit, and
Yeah.
you know, so that's grounds to terminate the contract.
Right.
So what I would say the responsibility of the buyer agent working with that client is the responsibility to make sure that they're asking those questions, right?
Yeah.
Because there are sometimes people will transfer a property, they haven't asked for the security deposits, they haven't asked for the leases to review them, they haven't asked to actually be able to tour that unit. You know, there's a lot of things that aren't being asked, you know, for documentation because it's owed to you. But once the transaction is done, you know, there's a lot of paperwork being signed that's saying I'm okay with this.
Yeah, that deal died on me today over this. So, but I still felt like it was the best thing for my client. So, you know, it is what it is.
That's unfortunate, but you know, definitely we want to know things that we should know. And sometimes, you know, although we are responsible for what we know and what we should know, sometimes we get a little excited and we like to take on transactions that aren't necessarily in our wheelhouse. And sometimes both the buyer agent and the seller agent are figuring this out. And no one is really aware of what documentation or what information is supposed to be sent over or communicated to the clients on either side. And sometimes that's just how bad things happen. So I would encourage you, hey, if you're stepping into certain realms of real estate that you're not completely familiar with, find somebody who does it consistently to help you navigate that transaction. Now, common points of negotiation. See, where did I put my paper at? Oh. Common points of negotiation are price and terms. So when we're talking about negotiating price, right? The biggest thing that that I hear, especially with agents coming into the field, is how do I know what to offer, right? How do I know what a strong offer even looks like? So that is your ability to do comps. So when we're talking about skills to be able to negotiate, another skill that you need is to be able to comp a property, right? To be able to look at that particular home and be able to compare it to the others in that neighborhood and be able to assess the value of it, right? Your ability to do that quickly is important to be able to submit a strong offer, because you need to be able to look at the square footage, the age of the home, the updates to the home, the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, and the floor plan, and be able to say like, okay, based on this home, its age, its condition, its number of bedrooms, its number of bathrooms, its location compared to others nearby, this is what this house is worth, right? Because a home may be overpriced. A home may also be underpriced. How do we know that? Are other sellers in this neighborhood offering seller concessions? Are they giving up seller help? Average days on market. How long are these houses on the market before they accept the contract? All those things are important. Why? Because a client may see a house on the market for 20 days and they're thinking, oh man, that's been there a long time. We should lowball, right? But maybe the average days on market in this particular neighborhood is 30 days. So it's not a long time. So you may be setting your client up for failure by submitting this lowball offer, right? You may be overpaying for the property. You just don't know it. Just because the sticker price says it doesn't mean it's worth it. The seller might be completely unrealistic. They might just be doing some old method of throw it up high and let's just see what happens. And your ability to be able to, because sometimes it needs a little finesse. I've gotten, sometimes getting an offer submitted, sometimes it's like, okay, especially when there's a big gap. Because sometimes you need to be able to convince the agent on the other side as well. Hey, Debbie. And then I'm just kind of like reading an email, right? Hypothetical. Hey, Debbie, I'm submitting this offer on behalf of my client. And I just want to be quite frank. I do not wish to upset the seller with this offer because at first glance, it can appear very low. However, I've done my due diligence, and based on the comparable sales in the market, the home is worth about, homes are generally going for this, right? And which is a reflection of the offer that we are presenting today. And not only that, we want this deal to work out. So not am I only concerned about the offer that we're presenting, I'm also concerned about the appraisal. We want this to work out on both sides. So Debbie, when you present this offer, please make that clear to the client. I've also enclosed the comparable sales that I have done research on. If there's something that I'm not seeing, please let me know. Debbie may be working with an unrealistic seller and she's like, yes, now I have something, because they're not listening to me. Now I have something to take to my client and say, look, here's here's what another agent is submitting, and this is their offer, and this is why. And this did not come from me, right? Sometimes that has a huge effect, especially when you're providing feedback for showings, right? Because they keep saying, the kitchen sucks, the kitchen sucks, the kitchen sucks, the kitchen sucks, the kitchen sucks. 50 times, they might say, you know what? You know what, Cynthia? I think the kitchen sucks. And you're like, well, I'll be. Maybe we need to go ahead and do something about that, or offer a credit for appliance updates or kitchen renovation as a part of the terms to get an acceptable offer in here. Make sense? So sometimes you may have to reach out. So if you're representing a seller, sometimes you need to reach out to agents because they may not be completing that feedback, and you need that as ammunition. So you need to reach out to them and say, please fill out that feedback. Or tell me what you think of the property. What did you think? What did your buyer think? So that way you can take that information back to your client and share it with them, right? Because if they keep seeing showing after showing after showing after showing after showing after showing after showing, and they're not getting feedback, who do you think they're gonna think the problem is? You. You, because it couldn't be them. It could not be. Does that make sense? So we're talking about price. We want to make sure that we're doing comps to make sure that the price makes sense so that we have a clear idea as to what the property is worth. And that will also help with terms that we're going to negotiate, because now we're saying like, hey, you know, they priced it at $500,000. These houses are really, they kind of got ahead of themselves. These houses are really only worth $450,000. I'm not submitting in a low offer. I'm submitting an offer that's what it's worth, because this is what homes are selling for, even in this market. And that's what we're going to submit. We might even offer $455,000, whatever it is, but this is a strong offer based on the comparables that have been done. And you share that with your client too, because maybe they are thinking the same thing, because they're saying, oh, Charles, let's go ahead and offer them $250,000. And you're like, what? Why? What are we doing that for? The houses around here are selling for $450,000. I just want to try it. We need to be showing them evidence as to why we're doing that. Use negotiation tips to respond to common points. So we're talking about some common points of negotiation. Let's see. We're talking about negotiation tips. So above all else, be professional. We know that. Remember your goal, a signed contract, because we talked about that. You know that they're not a client if you don't have a signed contract. This is what you're driving toward, and it's what both agents and the clients have in mind. Control what you say to anyone involved in the transaction. Your ability to negotiate. Like I said, there's a difference between negotiating and arguing. If you create anxiety in your client or other parties, you're reducing their leverage in negotiations. Continually refer to motivation. Remind your client why they want to buy or sell and help them reevaluate their request if they are becoming unreasonable. Hold on 1 second, people. My alarm is calling. Hello.
Hello, this is Shania calling from Sydney.
All right. Okay. So control what you say to anyone involved in the transaction. We obviously want to keep a cool head. If you create anxiety in your client or other parties, you're reducing their leverage in negotiations. One thing I've realized is like, okay, think about it. If you're frustrated, especially, in this market, you're on the buy side, you're trying to get an offer accepted. How effective do you think it is going to be when you're yelling at the listing agent? Probably not, or not being nice. I'm not saying be a pushover, but at the same time, we know what professionalism, we know how to get our point across. in a dignified way, right? Because again, this is not about us, it's about the client, right? And we have no idea what's going on in people's world. I remember I remember an agent was just not being responsive. They answered and then they were not responsive, not responsive, not responsive, not responsive. Someone very close to them died, right? So we want to be careful of how we approach people and how we deal with situations, because we don't know what's going on the other side. They're people too, right? So we just want to be mindful of that. Continually refer to motivation. Remind your client why they want to buy or sell and help them reevaluate their request if they are becoming unreasonable. There's nothing wrong with going back to the table and reevaluating their needs and wants. You don't reveal too much. Listen more than talk. Don't be attached to the outcome. Some people, some of us, we get excited. We've already spent that commission money before we've even gone out on to see the first house, right? We're already there. We're already at the closing table, taking Facebook pictures and telling everybody how awesome an agent we were in this transaction, because we're like, man, if all the referrals I'm gonna get for this client, man, if I just do good on this, when this is sealed and done, woo, the whole world is gonna be on fire and I'm just gonna get so much business, and we're not focusing on the task at hand. So we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, right? Keep motivating, keep pushing, deal with the task at hand, deal with the contingencies at hand, get through those, move on to the next block, right? So at the end of it, when we do all those things right, then our settlement is an accumulation of all those good activities. Make sense? Negotiation is a skill that can be learned and perfected with experience. So some of you might be thinking like, oh, I'm not a master negotiator, but the best practice for negotiating and bringing the buyer and seller together is the 3 Ps approach, because we're bringing the buyer and the seller together. So we want to make sure that we're doing that. Now, the 3 Ps approach is prepare, present, and position. So we're going to go through that. Prepare, learn, know your goal. So I'm looking for a rancher in a specific community because my client uses a wheelchair. We also need an in-law suite for their in-laws that are going to get there. And these are the other parameters under which I need to find this property. Or I'm working with the seller. This is what they're looking to do. This is their needs. This is their wants. This is their destination. They have to sell in order to buy, and you're hoping to get them there. So know your client. You may have a client that's experiencing a divorce. The spouses are not communicating. So having them come to settlement together to sign documents may not be a good idea. You go at 1 o'clock and you go at 2:30. Think ahead. That's thinking ahead. Definitely. That has turned into something that will, that's a story for another day. But yes, know your clients. Think ahead. Think of, you kind of go through damage control of thinking like, okay, how can I bulletproof this transaction, right? To make sure things aren't going wrong. It may even just be like you're at the beginning of the transaction. It's like, okay, I know my seller works during the day. They can't do showings in the evening. It may be, I know that they are a medical professional. They work 13, 15-hour days. Think about the client. What do they need to know? What can I do to create this high-level experience for them so that way I can take a lot of the thinking and the pressure off of them because of what they're going through. We know the client, it's the end of the school year, they're preparing for graduation, they know they have to move. Like, did I ask them, how are you getting all this stuff out of here? It might be a single mom, she's got 3 kids, she's got to do all these things, and she's got to work 9 to 5. Like, How is she doing all that? Check on them. You know, thinking ahead, taking the load off of them, thinking of things that they didn't think of already. Did you forward your mail? Did you notify your utility companies that you're going to be moving? Did you complete that notice that you were supposed to turn in for your apartment because you're not going to be renewing your lease? Like thinking of all those things that may have a negative effect on this transaction. Setting clear expectations. Your listing presentation does a lot of that. A lot of times when we have this dysfunction, I usually will be able to identify that, hey, did you discuss that in the consultation of this is how things are done? I'll tell you a funny story. I had a client, I met with the husband. They said they had purchased a home before, so here I am telling all of you not to skip the consultation. Here goes Mike, not listening to his own advice, right? I did the consultation with the husband and didn't do it with the wife, right? I'm running around, I'm trying to get them under contract, and I asked for the earnest money deposit. The wife flips out because she can't understand why I'm asking to be paid before a house is sold. And I'm like, what are we even talking about here? If you're purchasing a property, you need an earnest money deposit. And then I thought that, hey, if she had sat and did the consultation and I had done the consultation, she would have seen right there that in my process of submitting an offer, that whenever we're presenting an offer, we need to get an earnest money deposit and it's made out to Keller Williams Legacy. She thought I was trying to steal some money from her. I don't know what it was, and I lost a client. So I'm sure in retrospect, she figured that out with the next person because they needed it too. And she's thinking to herself, oh, dag, I thought Mike was a thief. But guess what? Somebody else just got that check. So doesn't matter now. But setting expectations goes a long way when people know. Another funny story. I had a seller who didn't know that they needed to move all their things out before settlement. Well, I'll be. Do you know what kind of nightmare that was? A house full of stuff the night before closing. Do you know that me and the buyer agent in the middle of the night were helping my seller move? Because he didn't realize that you have to have all of your things out of the house and that there is no concession of time to get your stuff out once you settle. Completely ridiculous. But guess where it was? In the consultation. So trust me, it goes a long way. It set expectations because you can't assume that people just know. Be informed. Obey the laws. Don't go to jail. Right? Don't go to jail. Client is not worth it. Don't be hiding stuff, helping the client disclose, with their latent defects. Oh, don't worry about it. They don't ask about it. We're gonna act like we didn't see it. Don't do it. Know the documents inside and out. Know the documents, know the deadlines, right? Hire a strong transactions coordinator to help you with that. Prepare, learn. Asking questions is the key to gaining information to win a negotiation. So it's not just talking. Open-ended questions, questions that have unlimited response options. So what would be an example of an open-ended question?
Are there any problems with the house?
That is an open-ended question. Are there any issues with the property that I should know about? Right? That you haven't mentioned, right? That we should be aware of to disclose to the buyer. Right? Another open-ended question is, why is that important to you? Let them explain that. Why is a 60-day close important to you? Why is buying a home in this neighborhood important to you? Why is buying at this price point important to you? What does that allow you to do? buying a home in this neighborhood, in this price point, what does that allow you to do for you and your family? Like those open-ended questions will give you insight as to what's important to them. Questions that close-ended questions that expect a specific response, often yes or no. So you don't really get the details, you don't really get the insight that you're looking for by just asking yes or no questions. So do you like this house? That's just a yes or a no, right? You know, what's important about this home to you? What important areas of the home are important to you? Well, the kitchen is extremely important because I cook a lot and I like to entertain. I also need a good sized yard because I have a humongous Shih Tzu. That was a joke. There's no humongous Shih Tzu, right? So these are things like, oh, okay, got you. So these are, so you know that, okay, that this is why this is important to them. So you know what you're looking for, because you kind of start to piss somebody off if you keep presenting them with options that don't make any sense for them, because they feel that you're disconnected from them and you're not listening, especially if they communicated those things to you. What additional information should I know? That's an open-ended question. You know, so Kurt, thank you for being here today and doing this consultation. I really appreciate your business, and I'm happy and excited that we're going to be working together. And through this time, I've gained a huge amount of insight on what you're looking for, and I think I have a pretty good idea of what that is. And is there anything that I haven't asked about that I should know in order to make this a high level experience for you, right? So you may say no, or you might say, well, okay, well, if something does come up, you know, feel free to let me know. These are open-ended questions, so that way they can continue to give you feedback. What is important about closing in 30 days? How do you feel about that? Sometimes they may say, no, I'm not feeling it. I don't know. They may be gung-ho about the property, and then all of a sudden they get back home and they're like, well, that street is a little busy. I don't really know about that. Do you have to sell your home by a specific date? Do you have any other offers? What is the bottom line price you would consider? So these are questions that you can ask that will support you in negotiating proper terms. Did I lose anybody? Everybody still with me? Thumbs up. What would happen if? Help you anticipate the next steps of the negotiation. So they might be thinking, oh, this offer is, you know what the house is worth, and you're getting offers of a certain type, and they're like, well, I'm not accepting that offer. Well, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, based on comparable sales, based on the feedback, based on the terms of this offer, this is a pretty good offer. And this is the only offer that we've received in about 3 weeks. Right? Now, I'm not telling you that you should accept this offer. However, you did tell me that you needed to be down in Florida within the next 6 weeks, so that way you could accept that new job that you dreamed of getting, and now you've been promoted and you're able to go down there and accept it. So what happens if we don't accept this offer? Right, well, I guess, well, then I won't be able to take the job. If I'm down there, if I leave, then I'm paying 2 mortgages. Okay, so if you're paying 2 mortgages, you know, how does that make you feel? Oh, it sucks, Mike. Oh, God. Oh, just thinking about it. Oh, I can't do that. Oh, I can't do that. I can't take the job. You know, that was sick. Oh, wow. So if you have to stay here in Maryland and you're not able to take that opportunity in Florida, or if you were in Florida and you took the job and you had to pay 2 mortgages, you know, what would that do for your family? Oh, now we wouldn't be able to save money. We you know, things would be a little tight. Okay, great. So we do have a really good offer, based on feedback, comps, and what we've conversed about. So let's do the right thing. And maybe let's see if we can get a little negotiating going on maybe this 1 or 2 terms here. But if we're able to do that and also get you this amount of money within the next 30 days, would that allow you to move forward with your job in Florida and be with your family? Yes, it would, right? So we're asking them what happens if, because a lot of times they're not thinking about the if. What happens if and you have to, and you're not trying to make them do anything, but you're bringing all of the information back to the forefront to their attention, right? Because it's like, okay, well, if you don't accept this offer, or if you don't buy this home, you're just making sure that you're aware that, hey, it took us 3 months to find this one. Are you willing to go back through that process? Because if you're game, I'm game. However, I just want to make you aware of what we're up against, because I know that you may be a little bit disappointed in the result that we got today. And the negotiations have, kind of gotten a little tense. So let's take a minute, know your client, right? Because you may have a person that, either you may have, you like knowing your client, that sometimes they need a little minute to think about things. You need to give them that space. Or you have a client that gets a little emotional, or they get angry fast when things aren't necessarily going the way that they want. So you need to kind of pay attention to those things to help them not to shoot themselves in the foot. That makes sense. Why is that important to you? Knowing why something is important to you, and that keeps coming up. Like, we keep asking that question, like, why is that important to you? What is that going to do for you? How is that going to make you feel? People say like, oh, this is just business. This is not emotional. Lies. Lies. Lie, 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 lie. Agents get emotional. The clients get emotional. Everybody's emotional. The sellers, the buyers, the title company, everybody's pissed off for no reason. Emails flying, and then everybody's calmed down and does kumbaya when we're at the settlement table. It's like, I said, oh, the seller or the buyer isn't that MF you told me that they were while we were by ourselves, are they? Now everybody's happy, because everybody's happy when they get what they want. So we want to make sure that we are being professional and maintaining a level of, we're kind of being that steadfast when we're working with the clients, because they get upset and they're ready to call it off several times throughout the transaction. So ask questions to clarify and set clear expectations. So in your instructor book, it says, read the scenario on page 9, 3 Ps approach, prepare, do. So let's see. Everybody got their packet? Look at this. Okay. Everybody got it? Or no? Now, while we're getting to that, when might it be a good idea to ask an open-ended question?
Early on, like the first meeting.
Give me an example.
The first time whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, you want to know as much as possible from the outset.
And what's that going to help you do?
It's going to help you better represent them.
You're right.
Do that questionnaire that we have in our toolkit, the buyer questionnaire or the seller questionnaire, all the questions, so that you know what their needs are.
So when you're thinking about it, so let's see. So allow time. What is it about this house that makes it your favorite? So that's like an open-ended question. That's good. So what is it about this house that makes it your favorite? What is the possibility of you paying for the repair and we stay at your asking price of $155,000? So that's like an example of saying like, okay, if you're in the negotiation. So what if the seller counters with a full offer to fix the roof or counters with no repair at all? So these are like when we're going back to the home inspections, giving potential scenarios so that way you know how to move forward with next steps, right? Because we're finding out what's important to them because we may have to switch or let some things go and in order to get some other things taken care of, because the HVAC need air conditioning, it's hot outside. We want to make sure that we get those things fixed. The loose knob in the bedroom, okay, let's not worry about that. But there's a plumbing issue, we need to negotiate that. So we want to be focusing on the important things, the more expensive things, when we may be negotiating repairs. Pay attention to verbal and non-verbal cues. That is important. That is important. When you get to know your clients and their verbal and non-verbal cues, and sometimes it may be one partner versus the other, right? So you may go into a property touring and you may realize that if one of the spouses doesn't like it, then, so I'm gonna give you an example with a client that I was working with, right? If the husband liked it and the wife didn't like it, it was done, period. And I made the mistake a couple times because she would come in, she wouldn't like it, but he would still want to tour the entire house for 20 minutes, and she would just be waiting by the front door. That was a cue. That was a non-verbal cue. We're not buying this house, because it didn't matter that he could have loved it 1,000%. He's not going to buy a home that his wife doesn't want to be in. So that just wasn't going to happen. So the cue was now, if she liked it, but he was so okay, we still may have a deal because he wants to make her happy and she has a stronger weight in this decision making. So those nonverbal cues are important. It can save you time and energy, right? Because a couple times he was like, yeah, Mike, let's go with it. He's spending time trying to convince her. Then she get in the car. I started all the paperwork. Then he gives a call back, say, hey, Mike, no, it's just not going to work. She don't really like it. So we just going to pass on it. But we already knew that from the nonverbal cues. She wasn't ecstatic about it. She wasn't excited about it. And it just was going to be a no-go. Keep quiet once you present an offer. When you're presenting an offer to the sellers, let the terms be there and ask them, okay, awesome. So now that I've shared with your thoughts, before you start running off at the mouth, ask them what are their thoughts so you can hear it. When you're touring property, same thing. Let them experience the house. You may not like it. You're not buying, they're not buying the house for you to live in. They like it. Ask them, what do they think? On a scale of 1 to 10, how do they feel about the property? Let them make a decision. And then if they ask you, hey, in my professional opinion, hey, if you like it, I love it. If it checks all the boxes, then great. Then this is the one. Listen carefully to what is important to the other party. Stay calm and relaxed. Focus on the customer's needs. Give your offer the best chance. Position, learn, ask what and how questions. Buyer wants to close in 60 days. Seller wants to close in 30 days. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you're requesting a 30-day closing. What is important about closing in 30 days? So we have to figure out, like, okay, that when even in your listing, you can put that, when can possession be? Settlement, 30 days, 60 days, you let people know so you can negotiate that. My goal is to let the buyer know why this is important to you. Summary, understanding what is important to other party allows you to prioritize and address their issues in order of importance. So we want to make sure that we're negotiating terms that the seller or the buyer are happy with. So read this. So now the next activity says, read the instructions on page 12, the participant guide. Pick a partner to complete the activity with. Be prepared to share strategies and your experience when time is complete. So we don't have in class people to pick partners with. So we're going to play a different game. So I'm going to share with you some tips for presenting an offer with the cooperating agent. Call the other agent. So we're talking about negotiating terms. Call the other agent, pay attention to nonverbal cues not from the agent, but so we're talking about calling the other agent or contacting the other agent, how they see fit, right? That can be important because if there's information that isn't disclosed that's important to the buyer, then you're able to get that information directly from the agent, right? Or get additional information. It may be, okay, is the seller willing to close early? Sure they are. Or no, they don't. Is there anything that's okay, I saw the listing, I read the instructions, I read the disclosures. Is there anything else that is important to the seller that we should know of when making this offer? Well, they may highlight that they need a rent back, or they may highlight that this is a short sale, or they may highlight that these are terms that they're looking for that may not have been shared for whatever reason. So reaching out to the agent, email, text, however they wish to be contacted, that may be an additional way to negotiate the best terms for your client. Tactics. It says counter tactics. Ask for a concession in return before agreeing to any further concessions. B, test the validity. Find out if the problem is real. Has the party with the problem exhausted every possible solution? And C, call them on their game. If it continues, then attribute what the bad guy says to the good guy. Since they are a tag team anyway, this likely will diffuse the tactic because you now have two bad guys. So let's look at A. So ask for a concession in return before agreeing to any further concessions, right? Because sometimes what it can feel like on either side is that at a certain point, the buyer or a seller can just feel like they're just giving up too much, where they're just giving and giving and giving and giving and giving and giving and giving. And at some point in time, they just feel like they're being walked all over, right? So that's never a good feeling for either the buyer or the seller, because when any of them feel like that, they feel like, hey, you're my agent. Like, I need you to negotiate for me because I have reasons of why I need to sell this and, get out of Dodge, but I can't continue to give things up and give up my position in this negotiation. Like, I'm not getting anything. Like the other party is really just getting all the other terms that they want. And that's how a lot of buyers have felt in this market, unfortunately, which things are beginning to shift a little bit. So, you know, this has definitely been an extreme market that none of us could have ever imagined. So that may have been a little bit tough. So these tactics, you know, you have to take them and apply them when it's possible. You know, if you're under contract for a hot property, you know, sometimes you have to have that conversation. It's like, okay, you know, this, you know, the position that we're in and what we're offering, we beat out the other offers. You know, we start asking questions like, okay, so if we are not able to move forward, you know, what does that look like for you? Do we go back out in the market? Do we find another house? Like, what is that going to do to your timeline? All these other questions. So that's important. But it is a good idea, you know, to get concessions so that way you're not just kind of continuing to get railroaded. Even if it's, you know, time, terms, in some space, just kind of want to feel like your client is getting something. Make sense? Test the validity, find out that the problem is real. Has the party with the problem exhausted every possible solution? So sometimes we have a client may be fearful of something that's just not going to happen, right? And they may have, you know, well, what happens? What happens if the furnace goes up and I don't have any heat and it's wintertime and everything like that? You know, and sometimes you have to say, okay, well, was there anything in the home inspection that indicated that the system was going to fail or anything like that? No. Okay. So are we able to get a home warranty, you know, in the event that, you know, something like that would happen? So sometimes we want to deal with the fear of what they're doing. It may be like, okay, well, I want to sell the house, but I don't want to let anybody in. You know, why is not letting anybody in important to you? Because I don't want people going through my stuff. That may feel very real to them. They think that people are going to go into their underwear drawer and start rifling around with stuff. Like, some people just feel that way. Has anybody experienced that, where they just like, I don't want people going in my stuff, right? And okay, so how can we want to be able to have people tour the property. So what can we do? We did a lot of that during COVID, right, people? Right? Because it's like, what if I get sick? What if this? We had to do a lot of that. Well, what can we do? Well, can we have people wear booties? Can we put a sanitization station at the front of the house? Can we make sure that it's very clear that don't come in this house if you don't have a pre-approval. We're not doing open houses. We're gonna, by appointment only. Like, what else can we do? Like, can we have the home treated by a professional sanitation company, after, during this time? Like, what are the things that we can do so that way we make sure that, okay, getting sick was very, very real, right? And guess what? And this industry kept moving because agents were able to have those conversations and be able to protect themselves and protect their clients. So I think that dealing with COVID-19 was a fantastic example of people dealing with fear and then being able to overcome that to keep the wheels turning. Well, how am I going to see houses if I'm out of state? Well, we can do a virtual tour. We can FaceTime. Like, look at all the things that we have been able to do when people say that, they have a fear, like, I'm not going to be able to buy a home if I can't go in it beforehand. See, call them on their game. If it continues, then so this is just talking about then what the bad guy says to the good guy, since they are a tag team anyway, this likely will diffuse the tactic because you know how because you now have two bad guys. Sometimes that can come with you have multiple people purchasing a property, right? I've seen this where it might be parents, right? You're having a consultation with the children or the child that's purchasing a property, and mom or dad or uncle or somebody keeps giving them advice to what you should be doing or what have you. If that happens, I invite them to the consultation, right? I want it because obviously they're a decision maker. So rather than have this continue to happen, there's a way to say like, okay, all right, Amber. So, just based on conversation, I'm hearing a lot of feedback from mom, and that's great because mom wants the very best for you. And since she is a major decision maker in this process, I want to have the opportunity for us all to meet together so that way we can discuss how this process works and I can answer any of mom's questions, because I know that she wants to protect you and I know she has a lot of questions and we have to move really quickly. And I want to make sure that there is no misunderstandings. I want mom to have my phone number. I want her to have access. I want to be able to copy her on communication if that's okay with you, right? Because I want to make sure that we have everything addressed. Because sometimes those naysayers, those people that have never bought a house or have bought a home 20 years ago, they can derail the process, right? So we want to bring them out of hiding, right? We want to bring them out of hiding. Oh, yeah, I want all the voices to come together and we're all going to talk, because this is not a secret, right? This is not a secret. This is not hiding. Let's all have the conversation, because sometimes then they can see that you're not such a bad person, right? Sharon is not just trying to get a sale. She really does care about this client. And she's not just trying to get her son or her nephew or his nephew to just buy a property just so that she can get a check. That's not what's happening. She's giving them real data, real information. She's not making things up. And she's letting them know that this is how we submit an offer in this market today and when. Make sense? And asking in your consultation, are all the decision makers going to be at the consultation? That is important. That is extremely important. Because, I don't know how many of y'all are married, but married people, if you're like me, we love to play good cop, bad cop. When we don't want to do something, I got to talk to my wife about it. I got to talk to my husband about it, right? I got to talk to my spouse about it. Whatever it is, right? Because you'll get there, do a whole presentation. They're like, oh, that was great. That was awesome. Let me talk to my husband about it. So we wasted a whole lot of time by not having all the decision makers there. So we got a couple things left. I know that I'm about to run over time, like probably 2 minutes. Are y'all okay with that? Had to take that call, make sure that there were no burglars. So I just want to get through this. It's important. So this is the part where we talk about ahas. How has your thinking changed? What ideas or mindsets that are new that you've gotten from today?
I'll go ahead and share. I like how you said use a net sheet on every offer you get, kind of like a spreadsheet to kind of give them the goods and bads of each offer, kind of like visualize it for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a really good takeaway.
Absolutely. So what I've done is that I've created like my own little spreadsheet of like multiple offers, right? Because you get multiple offers where I can take the terms and highlight it. So I can compare them side by side. So I can offer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? and say like, okay, so, and they're all headers, like on the left-hand side, like offer price, financing type, how, close date, is the transfer and recording fees, how was it going to be split, 50-50, something else, any special terms, so they can all see. And then at the end of it, it says net. So when I'm sending them, when I get 6 offers and I look at all of them and I compare it side by side, I'm not sending, if I send the client, we know how thick contracts are. It's like, okay, if I send them 6 of those, they don't know what they're looking at, right? So we break it down and make it easy for them to read, because guess what? Mr. or Mrs. Buyer or Mr. and Mrs. Seller, they work all day. This is what we do. We need to make it easy for them we don't want them sifting through 6 offers trying to make the best choice. That would be crazy. So you make it easy for them and say like, hey, here's all the offers. This is what the nets on all of them are. These are the financing. And when you get a chance to look at it, let's have a conversation when you get off work, so we can talk about what you see here and what I think, in my best opinion, is the best offer for you to accept and why.
One of my aha moments was to definitely go on appointments. Well, the appointments for the appraisal and inspection. I have been in a situation where I was selling my home and the appraiser came and he just literally walked on the outside and never came in. And basically, the appraisal that I received, and granted, yes, I am a homeowner, and yet the appraisal that I received, I did ask him, was that kind of slighted because you didn't even come into the home? And so from now on, I will definitely go to all appointments.
Goes a long way, trust me. Who else would like to share? These are the ahas because we learn from each other. That's why I didn't want to skip this part and just bid you adieu. Just want to make sure that everyone captures all of that. Sharon?
One aha moment for me was where you mentioned to ask if all of the decision makers will be attending the consultation.
Yes.
Because
yes.
that can definitely make or break a deal. I've seen it in the past.
Yes. Are all this, well, even at the appointment, the consultation, not just the consultation, but are there any decision makers that need to tour the properties, right? Because it might be, okay, Sharon, if we go see a house, is there anybody that needs to be here? And we need to pull the trigger to help you solidify that decision. Does mom need to be here? Does she have to put her stamp on it for you to be able to move forward? Because we got to move fast. So if we think that this is going to be the one, maybe mom needs to come with us to the showings, because based on the market, we won't have time to come back. It'll be gone.
Can I ask a question in reference to that though?
Yep.
Because I've seen in the past, there was a situation where there was a client that lived here, the parents lived in a different country. They needed to be a part of the decision-making also. So how can you get ahead of that situation? For instance, if let's say it's a child that lives here and the parents are buying a house for the child, but they would like to be a part of the decision-making, but they're not here. You're taking the client to see houses. He or she finds a property that they like, but the parents are in Africa. And they're the ones buying the property. Like, how do you remedy that problem? Because like you said, the property, if you don't put in an offer in a timely manner, then the property could potentially be gone. So how do you remedy that?
Mike, is it possible I can give her a suggestion on that?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. What I would do is, in those situations, thank God we live in a technology world. Can I say that?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, see if you can schedule times for your showings where they'll be available to do a maybe a video chat. Always you can, what I do is every showing I do, I actually record a video personally for my page anyway. And that way, because actually recently I had a client call me about a home, and it was an open house I did, and he wanted more information about it. So I said, hey, you can go on my page. I recorded a video. I opened up closets. You could see,
That's a good idea.
you know, so that's what I would do. I would definitely try my best to use all the tools to make sure those people are included in showings or listing appointments by Zoom, by any means.
Amber, that was some great sharing there. That was some great advice.
Thank you.
And the one thing I will add is setting expectations, right? Because you don't want to surprise people, and you ask people and say like, and you let them know that this is how, these are your concerns, right? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, or Mr. and Mrs. Parent of Sally, Judy, what have you. Houses are going on the market and coming off the market fairly quickly. In situations like this, what we have done that has worked out perfectly are a lot of things that Amber recommended. And then asking like, okay, you know, would that suffice? Would that work for you? Would that make you feel comfortable? Because it's unrealistic that you're going to be able to physically be here. By the time that happens, it'll be gone. So just getting that feedback and letting them know that these are your options, because some people don't know that virtual is an option. They've never done that before, and they don't know what they don't know. So they may just feel, they just may be caught up in pre-2020 thinking that everything has to be a certain kind of way.
Okay.
What do you feel differently about what was meaningful to you today?
This is Aisha. It was the setting the expectations from the beginning. Knowing what course you're going to take, the in-depth questions you had with even at the consultation.
Awesome.
So that was my
Okay. Perfect. Glad you got something out of this, Aisha. How will your behaviors be different going forward? What actions will you take going forward? So what are you going to do differently today moving forward that you may not have done before? Because, you know, we attend these things to learn and do. So what are you going to do differently?
preparation.
Preparation. With buyers and sellers. Sharon. And then Debbie.
I myself am definitely going to ensure that I do the net sheet for both buyers and sellers. I was not aware that that was something that you do for buyers also. I knew that you would do it for sellers, but I wasn't aware that you could also do it for buyers.
Yes, nobody likes surprises. I'm telling you, I've seen deals blow up. I've seen buyers stop buying because they're like, wait a minute. I didn't know that was going to be my cash to close. I did not know my mortgage payment was going to be this. Like, I didn't know that, and I don't want to do this. Debbie.
Well, I too like the net, and also to be more confident and firm about getting the finances straight first before even looking at property.
I agree with that.
Exactly. You're preparing them. You're preparing them for a purchase, or you're preparing them for a sale. Most times, this is the most money people have ever spent at one time and or made at one time. So, you know, it's important to make sure that we have all those things in a row. When you don't have the financing figured out, and it may come to find out, like, even by doing the net sheet, you're able to see like, okay, well, you have this amount of money, you need this amount of money on average, because okay, you need 3.5% down for your FHA loan, you need about 4 to 5% for closing costs. So, okay, we need about 8% if we were using all of our own money. So, okay, how much of that do you have? Oh, well, you don't have all of it. Okay, are there some grants available? Is there some assistance available for us to make this work? Are we going to get it from the seller? Like, it's not going to fall out of the sky. So we got to strategically figure out, like, where is this going to come from? Are we able to do an appraisal gap? Can you do that? Can you offer a list? What happens if it doesn't appraise? You know, where's that going to leave you? Like, all these things that you can do, because we can make promises, but that doesn't mean we can deliver if we don't know the math.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
During the financial conversation, are you also inquiring about credit score?
So I do.
Because they may have the funds, but not the score.
I ask people up front, you know,
Okay.
before I even, I'm very casual about it. And I just say, hey, you know, great. Have you spoken to a lender? No? Awesome. Great. I have some great professionals that I'm going to be able to connect you with. You know, just while we're here, how's credit? That's an open-ended question. How's your credit? People who have bad credit know they got bad credit. People that know they have good credit know they have good credit. So I asked the open-ended question, how's credit? Most people know their score. They say, I'm here, right? And I say, okay, awesome. We know we need about this amount of money based on, you know, averages. You know, how much money have you set aside for this journey? Well, I have $20,000. Okay, awesome. So we shouldn't have any problems. And I'm going to connect you with John Doe, one of my preferred lenders. And, you know, we're going to let them have a conversation with you so we can get that pre-approval and we can rock and roll. I still want to know for myself, because I'm the one out there negotiating these terms. So, and let's be honest, we may, and it's not that we want to take business away from people. Sometimes we have to switch. We have to switch lenders. We have to switch gears. We have to make an adjustment. It's like, okay, we were doing this, something happened, you need grant money. This person doesn't work with that grant. I'm going over to this lender because I know you need this money. Or what have you. Things change. So the more information that you know, sometimes you have to switch gears. Right? And the last question, and I'll let you go. Thank you so much for being patient with me. What tools, models, or systems will you definitely use? How will they make you accountable?
Well, I'll definitely say for me, using that example of your spreadsheet you told me about the last time I spoke up, that's definitely I'm going to start implementing.
Exactly. So I'm going to give you some tools just in case you didn't figure. The NetSheet tool, the financial tool, spreadsheet for your breakdown of your offers, a mortgage calculator. Sometimes people just have questions. It's like, hey, you know, your lender probably has one. Tell them to send it to you. Have it in your app or what have you. So that way they might have some general questions. In Bright, it also, like when you're showing properties, there's a directions that allows you, so you can actually schedule the properties that you're looking for, and then you can schedule the best route to take. So that way you're not driving around in a circle. So that can save you time there, right? Because it can say, you want to see these 5 houses? Okay, well, if you're leaving from here, then you should go see this house, this house, this house, and then this house. So that will save you time as well. So you can actually create a list in Bright where it's like, okay, there's it's called a basket. It's called a basket tool, where you look up a property. Say if you look up 123 Main Street, and you can add it to basket of John Doe, and you can add 123 Main Street, and then you can go to another property and then add it to basket, and then you can open the basket itself, and then you can hit directions at the bottom, and it can tell you, okay, so that way you can schedule them that way as well. So you can schedule 123 Main Street for 1 o'clock, this one for 2 o'clock, this one for 3 o'clock, and that one for 4 o'clock. So that way you're kind of going in the order, and you're not just bouncing all over the place, especially if you're like me and you get lost in the paper bag. So There's
They have
that.
a class on that on there.
Yeah. So those are some tools. And then the last two that we talked about, listing presentation, buyer presentation. Those are two additional tools that you will definitely want to take and use. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you got a lot of value. If you like what you heard today and you want to see me again, then let the leadership know, and I'll be back.
You were an excellent presenter.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mike.
Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Do the same.
Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate all the advice, all the training, all the tools you gave us. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for being here.